The truth is, in many developed countries, including the United States, the government has grown too big, promised too much, and waited too long to restructure. And now it's going to have to start making tough choices. Politicians don't like to make tough choices typically unless they have cover to do so, because they're afraid in many cases that the people can't handle the truth and they may not reelect them if they do things that they don't like. Fortunately, in the United Kingdom, your coalition government has come together and is making tough choices sooner rather than later in order to help avoid a debt crisis in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is about ready to enter another budget discussion, and so is the United States. But there is a stark difference between what's going on here in the United Kingdom and what's likely to go on in the United States. In the United Kingdom, your coalition government is talking about making dramatic cuts in spending very quickly. In the United States, we're going to see cuts, but nothing of the magnitude that you see in the United Kingdom. Ours is going to be less over a longer period of time. But one of the things you are seeing in the United Kingdom is a seriousness about dealing with the structural deficits that lie ahead. And so far, we have not seen that in the United States. And it's very, very important that we do sooner rather than later, because the United States is not exempt from a debt crisis. And if there's ever a debt crisis in the United States, it will be felt not just in the United States, but around the world. My understanding is that the UK government has talked about significant cuts across the board with two notable exceptions. The first is health care, which is the rate of increase is being reduced dramatically, but it's still going up somewhat. And I think that recognizes the reality that it's very difficult to dramatically cut health care cost because of longer lifespans, proliferation of medical technology, and the fact that health care costs go up faster than inflation, so for a variety of reasons. And secondly, international aid. It's my understanding that the UK is actually going to spend more money on international aid, which is probably a cultural issue in this country. But I know in the United States that would be very difficult to sustain, because many Americans believe that we spend too much money on international aid already, when in reality it's only about 1% of the U.S. budget. Leadership is about looking ahead, seeing the trends, the challenges, and the opportunities, taking affirmative steps to capitalize on the opportunities, to mitigate the risk, and to avoid crises. Unfortunately, there are many countries that exhibit laggardship. They don't do any of the things that I just described. They wait until a crisis is at the doorstep. Then they do things typically without adequate due diligence and call it leadership because they finally acted, not because they should have acted sooner, but because they waited for a crisis to give them cover to act. On the issue of fiscal responsibility and dealing with the structural deficits that face their respective nations, I believe that Prime Minister Cameron is clearly demonstrating more leadership at the present time than President Obama is. Prime Minister Cameron is working together with the coalition government to directly address the need to cut government spending, to reform the tax system in order to put the country in a more prudent and sustainable path. Ultimately, we're going to have to do that in the United States as well. We have a little bit more time because we're a larger economy and because the dollar represents over 60% of the global reserve currency. But ultimately, President Obama is going to have to lead because, after all, he's not only Commander-in-Chief of the United States military, he's the Chief Executive Officer of the United States government, and that government's financial condition is deteriorating, and we are not exempt from debt crises either. Based on my experience, both the United States and the United Kingdom are good about providing transparency with regard to public finance. But my experience is the United Kingdom does a better job of looking at planning and looking ahead with regard to what it's trying to accomplish. In addition to that, it's much more disciplined about dealing with its structural deficits, at least of late. And furthermore, it's ahead of the United States in looking at value for money and outcome-based results dealing with public services. And so this is an example where I think the United States could learn something from the United Kingdom.